Thank you very much. Welcome to the Staffing and Appeals Committee. Can I ask everyone who is present, please, to turn off your mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we'll all make our way downstairs out of the main entrance and turn left. The muster point is at the far end of the building. Just turning off the sound on my phone as well. Can we have apologies for absence and declarations of interest, please?
I have apologies from Councillor Kevin Reynolds and Councillor Count is substituting, and from Councillors Billington and Tierney.
Thank you very much, and confirm that we're quorate. Yes. Are there any conflicts of interest, or anyone wants to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interests? Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I'm mindful that this is not normal for officers, but considering one of the items that is scheduled on your agenda for consideration today, subject to your decision on the exclusion of the press and public in relation to item 9 on the agenda, can I first of all disclose a personal interest in some of the sections of that report? And I suspect the Service Director for Human Resources will also wish to do the same. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That could be recorded, please. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Then noted and will be recorded. And no other declarations of interest? I see none. Thank you very much. Let's continue. So we're asked to approve the minutes of the meeting which took place on the 3rd of September as a correct record. Can I ask any member who has got any comments to make, if you'd like to raise your hand? No. Does everyone agree that the minutes are a correct record? Yes. Thank you very much. So are the members, you're all happy to approve the minutes as written? Yes, thank you very much. That's unanimous. I'll sign the minutes later on. Right, first, we've got several items here which are for discussion, and I do hope we can have a proper thoughtful discussion, because I know that although there aren't matters for decision, it's really important to get our feedback and our input. And I know that officers put a lot of work into these reports and a lot of thought into the underlying activities. So it's really important that we input to those. First of those is the workforce policy, and it is the people strategy update, I should say, by Anna Syson. And can I ask the Head of Workforce Policy, please, to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be with you today to provide the first update on progress with our People Strategy Action Plan. You'll recall that this was finalised and agreed in July, and it was agreed that we would monitor activity via the Corporate Change Board and also provide you with updates twice a year. So this is the first of those updates. I'm very happy to take any feedback about the format and the way in which we provide these updates as part of any questions or comments you'd like to make. As a reminder, we have 5 themes in our people strategy, 4 of which we will cover in my time with you today. Including you, which is the 5th theme, links primarily with the workforce elements of the EDI strategy, and our EDI business partner, Faye, will be talking to you also today about relevant workforce updates from that action plan. You'll have seen the slides setting out activity so far by those 4 other themes of attracting you, appreciating you, supporting you and developing you. And the slides represent activity that is taking place across the breadth of HR services, as well as in conjunction with other services such as communications, property services, digital services. I expect you may have questions and perhaps interest in knowing more detail in some areas. I will answer as many of those questions as I can. And if I need to seek some input from other colleagues, you'll be seeing some of them today, and otherwise I'll take those questions away and I'll I'll come back to you as quickly as I can. We've given an overview of the progress so far. We've started, as I said, on this action plan in the summer, and we are on track with the majority of actions there. There's a couple around the Attracting You theme where we haven't been able to start those as quickly as hoped, and I have put on the final slide around risks and barriers a note around international recruitment, for example, which has been paused, in relation specifically to social workers. And there's a couple of areas in the Attracting You plan around career pathways that just needed a slightly later start date, but as I understand it, they will be progressing now. Highlights from Attracting You: application rates for our apprenticeships campaign are high, and we're finding new ways to encourage recruiting managers to consider offering apprenticeship options. And we're facilitating an adult social worker apprenticeship cohort starting in the autumn. And in terms of integrating wellbeing into the candidate experience, we're seeing good awareness among our new starters when we ask them of our wellbeing interventions. So people receive a new starter survey within their first 6 months, and that's supported by increased promotion of our offer to candidates. We've incorporated our new care values in our recruitment so that candidates know what they can expect of us as an employer. And we have developed our KPIs, so enabling us to use our data more effectively for benchmarking with other comparable local authorities. And we've launched live dashboards for use by HR colleagues in advising and partnering with directorate management teams. Highlights from the Appreciating You actions. As I said, we've launched our new care values, and one of the ways that we are embedding those in terms of understanding in the organisation and awareness is to gather and showcase real examples of those values in action in a variety of ways, having a dedicated CamWeb page, making sure that the values are referred to in our conversations, yes, but in Cambridgeshire conversations, the Spotlight Awards, and referencing things like tying together our wellbeing blogs, our EDI communications, so that we are showing colleagues how demonstrating those values links to real things that we're doing in the organisation every day. Our leadership team role model ways of working that promote wellbeing, and talking, for example, about how they manage their time and wellbeing in spaces such as CLT question time, and in approaches to meeting scheduling. And if you'll recall, we've had some feedback previously that we're now responding to around making sure there's just that time in the working day to have a break between meetings, for example. We have launched wellbeing conversations for managers, so a new piece of learning, and that's in 2 formats. One of those is a video format, so if managers want to access a shorter version, there's a video available to them to access at any time. And also there is a workshop opportunity for them to come together and spend a little bit longer learning and understanding knowledge, and also the skills that support them to have those effective conversations in their one-to-ones with their teams, so that they understand the resources that are available to their teams in supporting wellbeing, how to have what can be perceived to be difficult conversations about how somebody is and how they can be supported, and also understanding as a manager what support is there for them. And we've recently had our October Wellbeing Hour, in which we focus specifically on support for health at work, looking at our new health and attendance policy, and also things like access to work and DSE assessments and some of the practical elements of making adjustments.
Apologies, Anna, we had some struggle with the live streaming and sharing the slides. So can you tell me where you are now, and I'll go back to...
Sure. Appreciating You, which is slide 5, Janet.
Thank you. Yeah, please do carry on.
Okay. Okay, and then in terms of our employee benefits, we are undertaking procurement in relation to our employee benefits contracts. So by which I mean how we source or how we offer to colleagues lease cars and a cycle scheme, and some options in terms of discounts, as well as loans and a savings scheme. So we will be progressing with procurement on those in the coming year, and looking at the moment, we are continuing to manage our existing contracts to understand the impact they have, so that we can look at what use are people making of certain benefits there, and how can we use that to focus our promotional activity internally, not only so that people maximise their understanding of those benefits, but sometimes the intelligence we get from those contracts can also help us to link up with other activity that we're doing, perhaps in relation to financial well-being and the kinds of things that we promote there. Now on to supporting you, please, Janet. Thank you. Yeah, here we are. Okay. Part of supporting colleagues is obviously making sure that there's a safe and a effective environment for them to work in, and our accommodation improvement programme there is underway. We've got the timelines for consultation with colleagues communicated, as well as a network of team champions who can play a role in supporting colleagues through that change process. And we are also going to be doing some focused workshops with managers of those teams around managing change, what that can look like, and how they can support their teams effectively through that. Other buildings updates. Our emergency period products rollout has continued, and we now have work locations holding stock. The number there is 43. So that's a big increase to make sure that we've got the same provision available to colleagues across the county. And that was, as you may recall, in response to feedback we had as part of our menopause awareness sessions, that would be useful to people to be able to access. And how do we ensure that we have learning to support ourselves and to support others? Some of our interventions that I wanted to highlight here are our Schwartz Rounds intervention. So these are reflective sessions that we run monthly in conjunction with the Point of Care Foundation. They allow colleagues to come together and reflect on the emotional impact of their work. We're approaching our 1 year mark there, and we've seen a lot of value from colleagues attending those. It's one of the few interventions that we run in person, and it's a bit different in that respect. And people give us feedback. For example, we've had over 90% of people who've attended have said that it's enabled them to better understand the emotional impact of work on themselves, but also on colleagues. So kind of understanding what other people are going through, as well as what we are going through day to day at work, has been a powerful outcome there. We have our Managers Hub on CamWeb, which is a central point for resources for managers to be able to access, along with 2 learning options, Manager Essentials and Confident Manager. Those are really well used and attended, and we've had to increase the numbers of sessions there to meet demand, which is a positive news story there, given that we know the important role that managers play in terms of people's perception of being supported effectively at work. And it's really important that managers know where to get the right information, what resources are available, and what knowledge and skills they need to support their teams effectively. We've just come back from the LGC Workforce Awards, and we were nominated for 2 awards there. And Kerry's going to talk to you later about the Next Generation Employer. We were also nominated in the Wellbeing Innovation category. We lost out to Calderdale, but it was very nice to have been shortlisted and recognise a lot of the work that we do as a council to make sure that people can thrive at work. And we are actively participating and promoting in research that furthers knowledge and understanding of health and wellbeing at work. So important for us as a large employer, if we can, to promote those opportunities for research into organisational health and wellbeing. We've had some really positive feedback from the Pain at Work study, which we've invited colleagues to enrol on, and that's around trying to understand more effectively how people can manage pain if they experience that day to day, and still feel that they can work effectively and be in work. Next slide. Thanks, Janet. Some more highlights here: developing, understanding and raising awareness. We continue to promote awareness of a vast range of topics through our Wellbeing Hub and our blogs. We produce about 100 blogs a year, and we are always in those signposting to trusted resources, sources of support, and research-based interventions. And people can find all of those on the Wellbeing Hub, along with recordings of our wellbeing hours. We are listening to colleagues via a range of routes to understand their experience and use this to develop and focus interventions. We've had all of the tier 1 listening sessions responding to the employee survey, and we have agreed some next steps around how those will be responded to both at a service level and corporately. In terms of data, we do a lot of monitoring and analysis of absence data in relation to what that means for our wellbeing offer and how we need to respond there, looking at both quantitative and qualitative data to understand the experiences of people at work and target our interventions there. CLT review our health and safety information and statistics monthly via that dashboard, and also incorporating property compliance measures to provide that rounded picture. And our Respect at Work disclosure app has been developed and launched to provide another source of data on colleague experiences. Some highlights from the Developing You section of the action plan. We have the Think Ahead programme, which is a fast-track graduate programme to help qualify as a social worker in mental health. Huge number of applications there for the 20 adult social work placements, and those are due to start in January 25. We've also consulted with a range of groups over the summer, looking at the engagement survey feedback and trying to identify what those gaps are in our current learning offer, particularly with that focus on skills for line managers. You may recall from the employee survey that we had seen an area that people wanted a bit more support from their manager on was about constructive feedback and also career development. So trying to understand from people where they think that skills for line managers could, or learning to support skills for line managers could be further enhanced. And there's an evaluation group that's been established to look at how we can best demonstrate the effectiveness of learning interventions through measuring knowledge acquisition and how people are applying their learning sometime after they've actually taken part in it. So at the moment, we know what people have thought about the learning at the time, but we're looking at later on down the line, how are they applying that? Is it effective? What does that mean in terms of how we review and improve that learning on a continuous basis? And then 3 risks or barriers we just want to highlight and consider. As I said, we have paused that international recruitment while we review the support that's needed to effectively and carefully bring people on board to the organisation. And so that's around some of those themes in attracting you. Supporting you, there's always lots of things that we could do around wellbeing, and we want to look at that in a holistic way as part of the next business planning cycle to see where we best allocate and focus resource to further enhance our wellbeing offer. And there are some activities set out in the People Strategy Action Plan that relate to the new learning centre. And we now know that will most likely be coming in 2026. So we will be adjusting the timeframes of the linked outcomes there. Thank you. Very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. That was actually an extraordinary presentation. It was so broad. There is so much happening, and it's really heartwarming to see the sort of thoughtful, broad range of activities that do all cohere. So much going on. I know people will have questions or comments. Henry.
Yeah. Thanks again for the presentation. As Chair said, very, very detailed and very full of information, which is helpful for us because it means we're less likely to ask you questions. So really appreciate that. 2 from me. So obviously we mentioned the engagement pieces that we're doing. So things like surveys, roundtables, that sort of thing. I know it mentions in terms of turnout and uptake of the surveys, the actual numbers and percentages of employees that engage with that. I mean, do we have any sort of anecdotal feedback on how well the other engagement pieces we do are taken up? I think that'd be interesting to know, just how useful these things are and if they're actually being used. And then the second question was just for my clarity more than anything. So we've obviously got the 4 themes: the attracting you, appreciating you, supporting and developing you pieces at the moment. But then there's also the including you, which I think very closely links in with our EDI strategy. So is that now a new theme that we're including in the strategy moving forward from today? Or is that something that's always been there? Because it wasn't completely clear to me from the paper. And then sort of a subsequent question following on from that is, presumably the including you theme would need to be sort of kept as up to date as the EDI strategy would be, because I'm guessing there is a huge amount of overlap between our EDI strategy and our and our including you theme. So yeah, so it's just a question around how those two are linked, and are they reviewed at the same time to make sure one isn't outdated compared to the other, if that makes sense.
Sure, thank you. I'll answer the question about the EDI themes first, if that's right, and then I'll come back to engagement activity. What we're saying in the people strategy is that inclusion is essential to everything that we do in relation to supporting people in that action plan. Because we have that separate EDI action plan, and part of that is about community and part of that is about our workforce, we are linking with where we've got the people strategy action plan. We will say, we want to achieve this, but it's actually how we're set out to achieve that is within the EDI strategy action plan, so that we're not running 2 separate sets of actions that are both trying to achieve the same things. Yes, Faye and I are working very closely, and as a management team, we're making sure that those activities are linked up, so that we are making sure that inclusion is a core part of what we're doing as part of the people strategy action plan. And in relation to engagement activity, I can get some figures for you if it would be helpful on things like the new starter survey take up, exit questionnaires, exit interviews. There's some talk before you walk interviews that happen if people are thinking about leaving. Is that the sort of thing that would be helpful, so that you can see of the numbers of leavers, for example, how many are taking up an exit questionnaire of our new
Yeah, I mean,
who are we hearing from?
I mean, in the action plan, I mean, we see in the papers that the all employee survey that was undertaken last year had a response rate of about 54%, which I know from experience is high. So, it'd be interesting to know, the other engagement pieces we do with staff, how well they're taken up as well, just to see, whether the data we're getting can be sort of extrapolated across, across the whole workforce, or if, maybe we need, if it's not well taken up, why is that? And maybe we can change it to, a format that is more engaging or more interesting for our staff.
Yeah, thank you. So the engagement survey is the one that was put out to everybody, and as you said, did get a really good response rate. And we're not doing that every year, because obviously we need some time then to actually be able to act on it. So that's the one that goes to everybody. So in terms of measuring total response rates across the whole workforce, that's the one where we could see how many people in total are responding. So some of the other pieces of activity are more focused. Some of those follow-up sessions I talked about, for example, in the tier 1 areas, each member of CLT has done their own listening sessions. And for example, I know in adult social care, they've had over 20 sessions where they've gone out and talked to members of the adults leadership team, have gone out and talked to teams, and they've had quite large groups in those. So I could also get some more figures on some of those listening sessions for you.
Again, if that's not too difficult information to pull together, then yeah, absolutely. If it's easy to get, if it's too difficult, then don't bother staffers already that already, I'm sure, got too much on their plate. But yeah, no, that's fine for the moment. But yeah, thanks again for the report.
Thank you. I know the Chief Executive wants to.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification for the benefit of members, because I think Councillor Batchelor's asked a really important question around links between the people strategy and the ED&I strategy. I think it's also incumbent on us to recognise that the ED&I strategy is not just about our workforce. So whilst there is a strong relationship and you have a separate update on the workforce related aspects of the ED&I strategy on today's agenda, I'm very conscious that the COSMIC committee has oversight responsibilities for the community facing elements as well. So I just wanted to make clear, mindful that this is obviously open to the public, that the ED&I strategy goes beyond simply our employment responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. And I mean, to start with, thanks for us being here with a regular meeting and agenda items that are not just forced on us by legislation. I'm hoping this is the start of a constructive committee. And I'd like to thank you for the presentation. And I think it's great. At committees, we often see how talented and innovative our staff are. And, you know, we get to appreciate what's being done. So thanks for the committee, and it's a shame we missed out on the award, but it's good to see that we are nominated, which is an award in itself, isn't it? You asked about a little bit of feedback on the format. I'm looking at the RAG statistics and that, and we've got statistics that tell us how many of the RAG of the objectives are red, yellow, green, blue, whatever. But I think most of the committees I've been on, I've seen a sort of list of what those objectives are and what each particular one is, whether it's red or orange, because I can't see from the papers we've got here which are the particular ones that are down as red. So I mean, I think that would be useful. I was pleased to see under the main report 1.1c, we're talking about social workers, that we're going to monitor the salaries and review the pay model, and talking about reduction in agency workers and reduction in vacancies as a measure of success. That's just one thing that I picked up that I thought, you know, this is definitely what the council should be doing. One thing I would like to say about this is that it disappoints me a bit, and I think I've touched on this before, that there isn't any more mention of trade union involvement in the people strategy. Because I always think that you look at things like focusing groups and listening, and it's a bit like opinion polls, but the real democracy is like the election. I'm perhaps stretching an analogy here, but the trade union is where the real democracy at work is. And also, I think going on, I'm hoping we're going to see a very positive sort of stream of news coming to this committee. And I'm hoping that we're going into a new era where staffing issues are treated more serious than they were before. And when you look at what comes down from government, instead of it being things about, well, often how you can be nasty to your staff and how you can lead the way in cutting the sort of amounts that you care about your staff and their well-being, that you're looking at actually a public sector organisation forging ahead and being a shining example of that. So yeah, thanks very much for the report.
Thank you. Lucy.
Thank you. I'm going to strongly resist the temptation to get involved in a debate about the impact of trade unions and democracy, and stick with my question, which was, I was really interested in what you had to say about the Schwartz rounds and the role that they're playing in helping our staff understand the impact of their work on their emotional life and the other way around, which I think is the kind of thing that the COVID pandemic made particularly relevant to our staff, but also to an awful lot of people working. My question is that entirely self-referral, or is there any management involvement at all in whether people attend those things?
Thank you. So Schwartz rounds are completely voluntary to attend. We do, of course, try and encourage managers to support and encourage their teams to attend and make sure that they're aware of Schwartz rounds as an intervention. For example, as part of our manager training on wellbeing conversations, we show them some of the range of interventions that are there and resources that colleagues can draw on. But we do want it to be something where people choose to be in the room, because it can be quite emotional. So it needs to be something that you've decided you're going to go along to, and you don't have to take part, you can just listen. But a big part of a round is to invite reflections from the audience, and so, you know, that needs to be a choice, and you need to be there of your own volition. Very, very happy for, you know, to talk more about Schwartz rounds to anyone who wants to listen.
That's really helpful. And I think the way you phrase that in terms of everybody being encouraged to be aware of them and think about how they might be useful is really good. But I can completely see that they, in order to function well, I think they need to be something that people only do because they want to be there. So thank you. That's really helpful.
So Stephen and then Neil.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the leader for the question on Schwartz rounds. Actually, I think this is one of the things I'm probably proudest of in recent months. It's an approach I'm used to from the NHS, from previous experience, which is where this had been rolled out much more comprehensively. It has proper clinical oversight as well. So our principal social worker for adult social care tends to lead on effectively the clinical side of things, because that's as much about ensuring it meets the standards that are set for Schwartz rounds to be conducted properly. Anna's right, though. I've attended one myself and I listened and sat at the back. And I have to say that they are always oversubscribed. They cover top subjects that are clearly very much of interest to individuals from across the organisation. And yes, I think the confidentiality of those sessions is actually making them even more powerful for people to attend and feel able to share. And as Anna said in some of the earlier update, creating that safe space for people to do so. So even just from the one I was privileged enough to observe, there were over 60 colleagues in the room at that point. And we had three, I think the format is effectively three storytellers who share their experiences to cause others to have a bit of a chance to talk and reflect. The three people sharing their stories were exceptional, and their level of honesty and authenticity made a huge difference. And that was just from the one session I've been to. They are hugely, hugely valued by members of staff that have attended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Neil.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to mention, actually, now that somebody has mentioned EDI, it does kind of relate to that, in that having diversity is not just about representation or about being more fairer or more caring, but diversity is a value in and of itself to an organization where it comes to, you know, valuing different points of view, coming together. So as it relates to the people strategy and developing, do we have a means by which we can find what other skills employees have? We often know the kind of skills that they come with for that particular role, but, you know, people are complex. They have all kinds of other experience and interests as well. I mean, we encourage volunteering, for instance, and that sort of thing. Do we encourage people to train not only in terms of progression, but maybe they want to move laterally to a different role as well, that sort of thing? Is there scope for that, or is there scope for people who have similar skills to get together or to share those kinds of extracurricular often skills, but they could also be important to the organization or useful?
Thank you. I think that's a really good point, and it's one that we talked about certainly in CLT when we were looking at some of the actions around attracting you and creating career pathways, and also making sure people had flexible skills so that they weren't just going in a linear pathway, but perhaps they might want to go sideways to different parts of the organisation. I think we've got more work to do around trying to ensure that we're capturing what those skills might be. Some examples, or one example certainly I can think of, is with our mental health first aider network. We encourage people to put in their profile on Teams, their Delve profile, to say what sort of other things they're interested, or what they've got experience or lived experience of, so people know I can go and talk to that person as a mental health first aider and they may have some understanding about something. So there may be something more we can do there, but it's certainly part of some of those themes in attracting you that we need to build on, I think.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? We've been asked to note the status of the actions, and I think they are duly noted. Thank you so much for that. That was really great. Our next item is the workforce profile update. So, Caroline, welcome. Please do introduce your report.
Thank you. Yes, hello, my name's Caroline. I'm the Head of HR Advisory and Recruitment. So I wanted to take you through some slides today, which looks over our whole workforce for the past 12 months. Have you got them? Are you okay, Janet? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is a broad overview, and the next slides go into a bit more detail. So don't mind moving on. So if we look at the head count, this is the head count for the organisation. It's sitting at 4,630 people, which has reduced slightly since I brought this report this time last year. As you can see, the majority of our workforce sit within our social care directorates. The next slide is around starters and leavers. So our turnover is remaining steady, I'm pleased to say. It sits within our target range of 10% to 13%. We have seen a very slight decrease. We do see fluctuations during the year of leavers. As you'll see in August, there's a slight spike. This relates to the academic year. We employ a lot of people on term time contracts, and they would leave around then. Thank you. So if I can talk to you about absence now. So our absence again sits within our target range of 8 to 10 days per FTE, and we're seeing a slight decrease in the sort of middle of the year, and then it's returned kind of back around to where we were about this time last year, which isn't surprising. It's quite a usual pattern. We can see that in terms of, if I go on to the next slide, it's the reasons. We can see that overall, the top reasons for absence are listed there on the right-hand side, with coughs and colds being the primary reason for people being off. That's normally for short term. And then anxiety, mental health and depression, which is usual and tends to be more for the longer term reasons. We also believe that people feel much more able now to tell us that they are suffering from anxiety or mental health, which previously they probably would have said they had stomach pain or a physical ailment. So we think whilst we need to continue to work to support people who are off for those reasons, in some ways it's a good thing that they're able to say that to us. And finally, I just wanted to talk to you about the recruitment side, and our recruitment hub is still proving to be really successful. We find that people find their way directly to our recruitment hub very easily. Most of our roles are filled quite successfully and we attract good quality candidates. We do, however, always have difficulty with a few of the roles, and I've put them there for you at the bottom, so no surprises. With social workers and senior social workers, project managers in highways, and analysts. So we know that we're no different to any other local authority looking to recruit these kinds of roles. These are the difficult ones to fill. But in most of our roles, we get about 20 applications per role, which is really positive. And we do find that the recruitment hub system has improved the amount of applications and the quality that we get. It's definitely removed some barriers for some people, which is great. Thank you. Happy to take any comments, questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Questions, comments? Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks again for the report. Just two quick questions from me on the absences. Is it possible for us to break the stats down, maybe not in the report, but sort of anecdotally per department? So we, if we're seeing, if say there's a high number of absences in one department over another. I know sort of anecdotally from district councils that have waste crews, a lot of the waste crews, they're the ones that have all the physical reasons for being off, musculoskeletal, etc. But I don't know if it's possible to see, whether we have one department specifically within the county council that might, for example, have higher absences for a specific reason over another, and if so, if there's anything we can do internally to combat that. And actually also, yeah, how that would compare with other county councils nationally, if it's just, the demands of that role, or if it's maybe something we could change at Cambridgeshire. And then second question, just on the recruitment, when we are struggling to recruit for roles, I mean, what do we tend to do outside of that? Do we go to agencies? Do we hire temporarily? Are we looking at other incentives to try and help recruit those roles? Yeah, so just two questions around there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the first question, yes, we can break it down. We've got our new Power BI tool is excellent, and we can drill down all the time. So we do regularly take reports to the individual department and directorate management teams to tell them exactly where their absences are and what the reasons for them are, so that we can then get involved as an HR advisory team to try and challenge managers, provide support, provide intervention. So yes, the answer to that one. In terms of the recruitment, we do a number of things. We provide support. We have a central recruitment team who are actually a creative bunch of people, and they provide quite a lot of support around advert writing, where to advertise, always try and think about whether an apprentice could come into that role. So we try and think of it in a different way. For the really difficult roles, which is essentially social workers, we have tried and are continuing to try lots of different routes. We've partnered with an agency to bring in permanent staff where we can, created a microsite. We try and use LinkedIn as much as we can, because people are attracted to people, and that makes a big difference. So yeah, I would say it's an ongoing challenge, but certainly something we're focused on all the time.
Thank you. Steve.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this good report. The first comment I want to make rose in behind Councillor Henley Batchelor. It was something I picked up on, and it was the top 5 reasons for absence, and they focused on things that I would suggest that largely we can't affect. So they are musculoskeletal, they're colds, they're flus. There are things that happen to people rather than things that are under the control of the county council. Whereas if you look at, as Councillor Batchelor suggested, is there idiosyncrasies in a directorate or a building, and you're looking for anomalies over things we do control, then you might find there's something you can do about it. So that is something that I would suggest. Another area that I have a suggestion for improvement is under 5.5, where we had the recruitment information, and it was the number of roles not filled. So we know that 88% of all advertised roles were filled in a certain way. But when we looked at the breakdown, social workers 41 in senior places 54, etc. Without a percentage, it's not very meaningful. So, for example, 21 highways officers could be out of 24, 97% for all we know. I know it's not, but for all we know. So it's actually useful there to have a percentage, so we get a feeling for how poorly it's performing. So yeah, just 2 suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to come in?
Just a comment to say thank you for those suggestions, and I think because we're very conscious we could have given you 30 or 40 slides full of data, and we didn't want to overwhelm, but we're very happy to provide more detail where it's useful and insightful. So I've made notes of those, and we'll make sure we capture that for next time, and perhaps give you some examples of where we have undertaken specific sort of interventions, either from an absence or a recruitment perspective, what we've actually done to address the gaps in those areas. That will hopefully give you a bit more reassurance on what we're doing. So thank you for the questions and comments.
Thank you. Yes, that would be really helpful. Any other questions? So I've got a question, which is, I noticed in the case management, you talked about there being about 100 cases being managed at any one time. I found myself wondering, is that normal for us? And how does, given our population of employees, and how does that compare with the sector? I'm just trying to gauge, is that normal?
Okay, so in terms of us, we've been monitoring that number for a period of time, months now, since we brought in a case management sort of system, and it has remained very steady. So that feels like that is about right for us. We don't actually benchmark against others, so that is something we could certainly do to, not everybody does sort of monitor their cases as much, but.
Stephen.
Chair, I think the issue of case benchmarking is always an interesting one, having tried to do this across different bodies as well. I think in some ways it's dependent on the nature of the organisation. So if we were to benchmark, clearly we would need to look at other county councils, because in the right way of saying it, that if we were to compare our caseload to, say, a district council's caseload, the directly employed workforce is usually fundamentally different given the different nature of services provided. So I would suggest that some comparison with county councils might be more appropriate. I will also say, Chair, I think in some organisations caseloads will be very low. I might say that that is not necessarily a good thing as well, because I certainly was mindful when I was responsible for the NHS HR profession. Some trusts were better at managing performance and all other associated issues around employees than others. And whilst you would always want to see caseloads appropriately balanced, I think a low level of cases would cause me concern, as well as a high level of cases. So I think Caroline's point around what I would call a normalised volume seems reasonable, but obviously it's something we do need to keep under review and keep an eye on. The bit that I would always apply a bit of a lens to, and I know that the members of the corporate leadership team do through their own feedback from HR business partners, is particularly things like number of suspensions we may have at any given time, because they need to be reviewed regularly and ensure they're not becoming anything other than the neutral act they're meant to be. And then equally importantly, for those matters that move beyond case and into legal proceedings, of course, then the appropriate focus and attention is given as well. But I think the benchmarking point's an interesting one. It's almost like benchmarking turnover. When is turnover good? When is turnover bad? When is case volume good? When is case volume bad? Not an easy one to give you a really good answer on, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Yeah, as is so often the case, Stephen beat me to it really with that comment. But I was just going to add that I think the majority of the cases that Caroline's team are managing at any one time are at an early stage or an informal stage, where the main thrust of it is a supportive one to try and turn things around and support people back into work if it's absence, or get performance back on track. So I would very much agree with what Stephen's saying, that often low numbers might very well mean that managers aren't managing effectively, or that the HR team aren't intervening when they should. So we would expect to see a fairly high number. Thanks.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Any other comments or questions? No, we're asked again to note the content of this report and the actions planned. Thank you very much indeed. Right, next up, we have the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy update. And are you Faye? Great, welcome Faye. And if you'd like to present your report, that would be great.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Brilliant. Good afternoon, everyone. Faye McCarthy, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Business Partner. So I'm here today to present to you an update on our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy and Associated Action Plan. This is a key enabling strategy, and our objectives enable us to fulfil our duty under the public sector equality duty, and also the associated action plan has been developed in collaboration with colleagues through our ideal staff network and wider across the organisation. So the strategy and action plan is split into 3 themes. You'll see there it's not just people focused, so we're thinking about our workforce, our communities and our services. In terms of workforce related theme, we are linking closely with the People Strategy Action Plan that Anna previously presented. And underpinning each of these themes are our guiding principles. So taking evidence-based action, listening to the voices of everyone, and having a transparent and robust approach that delivers meaningful change. Thanks, Janet. Our slide here highlights our governance structure. So action plan progress is monitored by the EDI Leadership Forum, which meets quarterly. And as I said, we work closely with the staff network, which is called IDEAL, and engage with the network through our EDI working group on all of our actions. Thank you, Janet. Next slide. This slide outlines the progress of our actions according to each theme, and it is colorated, I would say rag rated, but we've added a blue in there as well. So you've got red, amber, green and blue for each of the status. You'll probably note that there are a lot more actions in the workforce theme, and that's really our focus to, I suppose, provide the competence and the confidence for our colleagues to be able to deliver inclusive and accessible services to our diverse communities, and that's where the focus is around there. Thank you, Janet. So the next three slides, slides 8 to 11, showcase in more detail some of the completed and ongoing actions. So you'll see here some of the completed actions. And I just wanted to highlight that we have set up an anti-racism steering group recently. And also we are launching cohort 2 of our Women in Colour in Leadership training programme. The next slide shows our in progress actions. And you'll see here some guidance pieces that we're working on, and also relaunching our EDI champion network as well. So that will be across all directorates. The next slide includes some highlights of upcoming actions. So things like neurodiversity at work awareness training for all colleagues, and we'll be working closely with the neurodivergent peer support group on that piece. And then also looking at how we can diversify our Respect at Work contacts network. Thank you, Janet. The next 3 slides outline some of our, it's just showcasing some of the work really, and I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we have done. One of those being our Respect at Work disclosure tool. So that is to enable colleagues to disclose any forms of unacceptable behaviour that they might have witnessed or experienced from other colleagues. Anonymously or with their contact details. We're then able to follow that up with them, but also able to monitor trends throughout our different directorates as well. And that is linking closely in with HR colleagues to ensure that we are linking up on things. Thank you. Our next is around our EDI learning. So this really focuses on our foundation learning for all colleagues, but then how we can build on that, some specific learning for specific colleagues in certain areas like children and adults, and also for our leaders and managers as well. So we have proposed an approach to this, and our next steps are around anti-racism, neurodiversity and disability awareness. So we'll be focusing on those over the next year or so to roll them out to colleagues. In terms of additional wraparound learning as well, we have our EDI communications, which are regular blogs, which members are able to access as well through our EDI hub, and we have monthly conversations as well. Thank you. Our work around anti-racism, so this highlights our work so far, and then our upcoming plans, which are to host some listening sessions for minority ethnic colleagues to hear more about their experiences and to inform our action plan going forward. All of the actions that come out of this will again feed into our strategy action plan, which is a live organic piece for us to develop. Thank you. And this one highlights our ongoing communications, which raise awareness and celebrate events throughout the year. So you'll see quite an extensive range of different awareness days and celebrations for colleagues to tap into as and when they can really. And these go out through CamWeb for all to access when they have a moment. Thank you. Hopefully that's highlighted some of our work, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That's really excellent presentation and very concise. It's great. There's obviously a huge amount going on. Are there questions or comments? Sorry, Neil and then Lucy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I mentioned this in a previous one very quickly, but the value of diversity in and of itself. And, you know, we see here the actions and protocols against negativity, racism, the kind of inhibitors to people being part. But it would be good to celebrate the diversity, and as part of our appreciation of people, and the fact that diversity is a value in and of itself, I think. But we don't see enough of that here, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to that, or?
I was just going to say thank you for your comment. And I think that's a really important piece to celebrate diversity. I think we try to do that through our blogs and communications. We recently held an event for Black History Month, which is the first in-person event that we've done around that. So we are looking at how more ways we can celebrate and ensure we've got a positive approach to some of this.
If you want to follow up, Neil.
Yeah, just very quickly come. And I know that, you know, as a county, we want to represent our communities and to be more fair and caring. But also the fact that people might have insight, and it's like fingers into our community in another way as well. But my previous point was just I'm a scientist, and we love to bring different ideas to the table. It allows us to come to solutions and look at problems in new ways. And so that's the value of it in and of itself. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Lucy, then Mike.
Thank you. I slightly want to echo Neil's comments, even though that wasn't what I put my hand up to say. I think it is really important that we make sure that we are reflecting the value of diversity sort of to the organisation, that the different perspectives that people bring in our papers. So I think that's a good point, sort of as for feedback generally. The point that I actually put my hand up to make, though, is to say how much all of this work is welcome, partly because there's a real need to make sure that we are making work more accessible to everybody at the moment, with the kind of the situation with an enormous number of people not working because of mental health or physical health issues, and making sure that we are a workplace where people feel that they are able to carry on working throughout whatever illnesses they might have, and be able to sort of to work as much as they can under whatever their circumstances are, rather than feeling that work has to be 100% or not. Because actually, if you make it difficult for people to increase or decrease their hours depending on their health or their other circumstances, actually you're restricting your ability to access the full workforce, and that's not helpful for us as an organisation or for broader society. So it's really, really good to see all the work that's gone into this and how much work is going into it. And I was pleased to see the thing about assistance dogs, which made me think about it. My question is, how much are we sharing this across both other public sector organisations and in particular with the Combined Authority, the work that we're doing? Because I know from one of my other roles at the Combined Authority is doing some work on the Good Work Charter. And some of that is about sharing good practice, so that large-ish organisations like ours, who have the capacity of a reasonable size of HR department, can share the things that they're doing with perhaps smaller employers or smaller organisations. So I just wondered whether there was work going on across different HR departments within the public sector, but also whether we're sharing this with the Combined Authority, who will have a remit in terms of sharing it with the private sector.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah, I can respond to the second one in terms of we have a EDI regional network, which is broadened out, I suppose, to regional, where EDI colleagues at other local authorities all meet. We share good practice. We explore ways that we could work together on things. So that is an opportunity for us to link in with other local authorities. I also sit on the ICS EDI group as well, which is really key to looking at what NHS providers and wider are doing around this and how we can link in with the system and broaden that as well. We have had close links with the combined authority around equality impact assessments as well, particularly because there's a lot of crossover between the projects. But I think there's opportunities there to widen and broaden that as well. So it would be good to link in with the Good Work Charter. I don't know if Janet's been involved in similar. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Stephen wants to jump in on that before Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Two things really. First of all, I think on the Good Work Charter point that the leaders helpfully raised, we've been actively involved in helping the combined authority to take that work forward. That was something I was familiar with from having worked with Dame Carol Black on work and wellbeing issues nationally. And of course, Dame Carol is one of our local residents and is part of our university in Cambridge as well. But importantly, the Good Work Charter has also been supported by the County Council's public health team because we see the broader benefits around health and work in a joined up sense. So we've been actively involved through the work of Val Thomas and colleagues in that area already, and obviously want to reflect that charter back into what we do as an employer as well. Chair, if I may, just a slight digression, but it's actually quite important in terms of phase update. Whilst we obviously have focused a lot of the ED&I strategy work on the original 9 protected characteristics from the 2010 Act, I'm conscious, as members in the room will be, that we agreed, or you agreed, I should say, through full council to accept care experience as having the equivalent status to a protected characteristic. And that followed a very, frankly, exceptional presentation from one of our own care leavers, Elle Johnson, who spoke directly to the full council. Well, I'm delighted to say that Elle is actually employed by the County Council and has been for some time, and has been using her experience and is sharing that with neighbouring authorities, both as a care leaver, but also as the lead for our own care leaver offer for Cambridgeshire County Council. And if members weren't aware, she actually chose to share her story with the BBC this week. So that was reported on the regional news, and she was very helpfully talking about not only her experience as somebody who's been in the care system, but how she's putting her experience to good use to help care leavers and those in the care system now. The article also quoted the leader from Peterborough City Council, who have equally updated their care leaver offer working alongside us. So I thought that was quite a nice example of something that takes us slightly further than where we might have started in our ED&I strategy, but that's very much following members' decision to move that forward and treat it in the same way as our other legal elements for ED&I. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really really helpful to know, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for the report, and it's good to hear about the things we're doing. And thanks to Stephen. I think it is important we mentioned the care leavers on this as something we've been pushing. I'm pleased to see that we've got the developed neurodiversity at work awareness training in here. I'm wondering if when we're sort of trying to monitor some of these things, whether we've had anybody who's been dismissed or been going through disciplinary procedures that are connected with neurodiversity problems. Another thought that occurred to me is if we're monitoring quite a lot of good things here, but I'd like to know if we're monitoring whether ethnic minorities are getting more dismissed more in proportion. And again, if actually just the number who move on, if we've got more of a turnover amongst ethnic minorities than we have otherwise. Something I'd like to just mention at this juncture is that the Joint Administration has, I think, made a agreement in principle that we want to monitor the disability pay gap as well as the gender pay gap that we're forced to monitor. Hopefully enthusiastically agree with that, and the ethnic pay gap that we're doing that. And I think we need to make sure we're implementing that. I'm pleased that we are making a decision to do that because things are getting better in the employment realm, and we would have been forced to do this anyway by the Employment Rights Bill that is working its way through Parliament. But I think it's a good thing that we can be seen to be getting ahead on this, and indeed with a lot of the improvements in employment rights that are coming through, I think it's good for us to see our council enthusiastically embracing change for the better and going above and beyond and leading in all these respects and getting things done. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. I think Janet wants to say something before Steve.
Thank you. In relation to the first points that were made around how we monitor any of the essentially the casework that comes through, we do record if there is any kind of what protected characteristics are of the people that are coming forward, and also what the outcome is. So that is something that we can build into the reporting going forward. I'll ask Caroline to add that in so that you can see that it's not something that we believe is presenting as an issue, a disproportionate issue at this point in time. But of course, I appreciate that can change, and that's certainly something that we monitor. On the point about the disability pay gap, we've been reporting obviously the gender pay gap since it was introduced several years ago now, can't quite remember how many, and we opted to start reporting on the ethnicity pay gap long before there was a requirement to do so. Our data on that is much better at this point in time than our data on disability. So I did have a conversation with the team, because this is definitely on our plan of work to do. But at this point in time, the percentage of our workforce who have declared whether or not they have a disability is 35%. So if we were to run a pay gap report, it would be clearly very far short of being anything like accurate. So at the moment, our focus is on trying to improve the quality or the response rate on that data to a point where it becomes more statistically viable information. And the other thing I think is perhaps worth mentioning is our duty is to publish the statistics. What we've been doing is a lot of detailed analysis on what that pay gap information shows us. And just to give you some context, I've been told by the team that it takes us 25 working days each year to process the data, analyse it, and produce the reports. So it would be another 5 days at least to add the disability pay gap information on. And whilst we are obviously keen to do that, if it's not going to give us reliable source of information, we're sort of concerned about the value of that at the moment. So where we are at this point in time is intent on trying to drive that information up, try and get people to understand why it's important for us to know, and then hopefully we can take that on board for next year. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I mean, clearly as well, I mean, it is going to be a question not just of monitoring these things, but we've got to think about what we're going to do with that information, as if there's stuff that we can do to improve things. And I think we all have to accept that that takes officer time to get that job done right. But yeah, I would push for us to sort of, be ahead of the game on this, because everybody's going to be told to do this. I mean, hopefully we're going to be an authority that has been laying the groundwork now so that we're going to do it well.
Thank you. I really take the point, though, that it's important that the quality of the data is there, and then spend the time analysing it. That's the only way we're going to get good information out of it. Steve, thank you for being so patient.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I hope the committee will bear with me, because this is something that I'm doing off the top of my head, haven't researched, and has come up due to the meeting content. It was thanks to the Chief Executive, Stephen Moore. He raised the care experience as a protected characteristic, which was important. It was a motion passed by full council. Something is twigging my memory, and I'm unable to find it at speed, that we may have passed those from social deprivation, areas of high social deprivation, as a protected characteristic. And if that was correct, which I'm hoping, I'm seeing some nods, it might be something along the lines, could we incorporate that? And also, as a matter of housekeeping, here I was trying to find a historic log at speed. It'd be really useful. I found all the log updates that we get at full council, which has them until they're passed and written off as completed. But it would be really useful to have quick access from our site to all the logs in date order, with a simple title that we can click a link to. So I could have actually found out for myself at speed what my memory is twigging in. Thank you.
Chair, thank you to Councillor Count. His memory is accurate. I think it may have predated the introduction of the motions action tracker for full council. What did happen, and this is me dredging my memory, I think in 2022, council agreed to include the socio-economic duty as part of our equality impact assessment process, and that has been subsequently actioned with updates to our impact assessment methodology. On the broader point Councillor Count is raising, I certainly know that social mobility is now increasingly being looked at as part of ED&I reporting, and certainly the civil service nationally have been doing a lot of work in that space to look at how social mobility can be reflected in their workforce as well. So it's not quite on the same par as, say, the care experience being treated as an equivalent to a protected characteristic. But given that the socio-economic duty is something council has already agreed we adopt as part of our impact assessment approach, I'm sure we can look to factor that in for the equality, diversity and inclusion strategy going forwards. I think actually that's quite an important factor for us, linked back to some of the issues around, say, care experience that we've touched on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? So I've got a question. It was just it was just a thought arising from the presentation. I'm just wondering how thinking about the reporting tools where there's sort of anonymous complaints about unacceptable behaviour and so on, and I appreciate that's a tool that's going to be used widely, and there's perhaps a lot of experience in understanding how to deal with the sort of complaints that come in, because if you're on the receiving end of it, it can be quite disturbing to have an anonymous complaint. So I just wondered how you kind of handled that, what the experience was here, whether that was in practice that wasn't a problem.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important to note that this is quite a new tool. So it only came into place about a month and a half ago, following feedback from some of our peer support groups around having a mechanism to disclose something anonymously, because we already had our Respect at Work contacts in place. So we are sort of still finding our way with it. We have had a few anonymous disclosures at the moment, and we're quite clear in terms of what we can do with that. So we really can only monitor trends and look at the organisation. That we're not able to take anything forward, really. They'd have to leave contact details for us to do that. So yeah, and then we do link in as well to the Wellbeing Hub and support and guidance for colleagues who are disclosing anything, so that they've got links through to those, because it can take quite a lot to come forward with things. Thanks.
Thank you. That's really interesting, and I guess one to sort of watch how it develops. Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, I see that we are to note the progress made to date, and note the status of the actions. And thank you very much indeed for the report. So next up is the Cambridgeshire as a next generation employer, where we're being invited to review the progress to date. Thank you very much. And are you Kerry? Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please do kick off with the introduction to your report. Thank you.
Thank you. And Janet's going to help me with the slides. So thank you, Janet. So we brought a presentation to share with you this afternoon that we delivered to judges as part of the Local Government Chronicle Workforce Awards, and in the category of Best Next Generation Employer. That category looks at the efforts organisations are taking to attract, retain and develop colleagues who are under 30. So that's what I'm going to share with you this afternoon, just kind of take you through some of the things that we are doing in that space. Some of them are more mature than others. Some of them are kind of fairly kind of emergent as we work our way through, but we're really proud of the progress that we've made in this space. In our presentation, we were highlighting our progress in areas such as work experience, apprenticeships, graduate schemes, and how we support colleagues to have thriving careers with us, and the ongoing support we provide to them. To the next one, please. Thank you. And again. So our work experience offer has been expanding in Cambridgeshire. We are really trying to promote careers to young people. And these are some of the things that we've kind of done as part of that offer. We have a week-long programme for our work experience participants. This includes spending time in different services, but we also support them with their CV writing, their interview skills. We let them experience some of our e-learning modules so they can have an understanding of things like health and safety in the workplace, etc. And as we've kind of changed as an organisation, we've had to think creatively about how we can overcome some of the challenges around people working in a hybrid way. So if you think about work experience from probably 20 years ago, you'd sit in an office and maybe just shadow somebody for an entire week. And we've had to think differently about how to offer that similar experience to people. Next slide, please. This is just an example of some of the teams that have been offering work experience opportunities to people. And I think it's a really good reflection of just the breadth of things that we're able to offer young people if they want to come and experience what it's like working in local government, and probably doesn't match up to a lot of their initial perceptions about what local government is. So the fact that they're able to come in and experience some of these things is really interesting for them. Next one, please, Janet. Thank you. So this is our growth. So the first time we kind of really got back into work experience was in 2023. We had 4 students from one school. That was reactive to a request that came in. We then thought long and hard about how we could expand this. So in the summer that's just gone, we've taken 40 students from 20 different schools and colleges who've had a range of experiences. We've also extended this to an autism specialist school, and we've also gave some opportunities to some of our care experienced young people as well. So we've really thought about widening participation. We've really thought about how to engage the local communities in this, and we're really proud of that level of growth. We are now working on our proposals for next year to take this to a further step as well, to keep going on that trajectory. Next one, please, Janet. Thank you. And this is just some of the feedback from the young people that we collected as part of the experience. So overwhelmingly, the feedback from young people was really positive. They really enjoyed their time here. We're very proud of the feedback actually that we got from Girton, the autism specialist school. They were quite surprised that their students had a 3-day programme with us. They were really surprised that they attended for all 3 days. They kind of early on set some expectations that their students make their feelings known with whether they attend, and they vote with their feet. And the fact that actually they wanted to come back, they talked really positively about the experience, was really good. And they're talking to us about, again, can we do more for their school next time? So we were really pleased about actually how that had all gone through. The next area then just to focus on is our apprenticeship. So we didn't include this particular slide in our presentation to the Local Government Chronicle, but I've included it today for you just to give you a bit more background information. So my service manages the council's apprenticeship levy, which you're probably familiar with. We do that on behalf of the council employees, but also all of our maintained schools. And we just try and work really hard to promote apprenticeships off of the back of that, and to support moving forwards the number of apprenticeship opportunities that we have. We have been working really hard to reduce the amount of expired funds. So if you haven't spent your levy within 2 years, it goes back to government. And for 23-24 and so far this year, we have not returned any funds. We are utilising the money we have sitting in our levy pot to support people of Cambridgeshire. Predominantly, that's our own workforce, both in the council and our maintained schools, but there are also 47 apprentices in other local employers that we have supported through a levy transfer. So that's an employer that couldn't otherwise afford to offer the training. We're able to send our levy to them to fund that opportunity. And we do look at all of those applications to see if they're strategically aligned with us as an organisation. And a lot of those are supporting young people to grow their careers and get on the first rung of the ladder. So we're really proud of that. The other thing I was just going to quickly mention in terms of our apprenticeships is we've done a lot of work in the social work space around apprenticeships. And in January, we look forward to welcoming 20 new adult social work apprentices into the organisation. It's the first time we've done external recruitment. So there'll be cohort number 4, but it's the first time we've gone out externally. And we had 309 applications for those opportunities. Again, we think that's a really exciting place to be. And so we're looking forward to those. We told the Local Government Chronicle judges about Sarah. Sarah is one of our apprentices. She's a business support apprentice working in children's social care, but she also, you may have heard, won the Local Government Apprentice of the Year award earlier this year. It's a virtual day of competitions and challenges, which really sort of allows people to showcase their skills and their expertise. And Sarah did brilliantly in that space. She's since gone on to pass her apprenticeship and has secured a permanent role with us in the organisation too. So again, just a great thing that we were really proud of in terms of Sarah and her involvement. Another area of apprenticeship work that we're really proud of is we're growing our own civil engineers. So this was a partnership piece of work with colleagues in place in sustainability who noticed that it was being really difficult to attract people into these roles. So we've worked with them to actually develop a whole pipeline that allows us to bring people in as apprentices and support their development. So the gentleman at the bottom of the screen there, our current intake of civil engineer apprentices. They're based here, you might have seen them about, and they're doing brilliantly. And they have also managed to secure permanent roles as a result of this. And we put them through an assessment centre, so as part of the recruitment process. So on the next slide, please, Janet. This was just some of their feedback about what it was like applying for an apprenticeship with Cambridgeshire County Council and how the onboarding process has been for them. And it's very positive in terms of how they're describing the sort of places that they went through. Some of them actually enjoyed it. You know, some of them have been to assessment centres and interviews with other employers. You know, it was a relaxed experience compared to typical interviewing, which tends to be more anxious and formal. So in terms of trying to really welcome those young people into the organisation and give them an experience that was really positive, even those that were unsuccessful still had a positive experience that helped develop their skills ready for their next application. So we're very pleased about the work that we've done in that space too. And then if we move on, thank you. So the next bit we wanted to share with you was our graduate entry routes. So we have kind of 3 main graduate entry routes. We have the LGA's National Graduate Programme, which has now been rebranded as Impact. We have our ASIPFA scheme that enables us to bring graduates in to train as accountants with us in public sector. And then we've got our assessed and supported year in employment, which is for our social work graduates. So we talk about the Impact one first of all. So we have quite a comprehensive support package for our graduates. There are certain things we have to do for them as part of the NGP's Impact scheme, but we do offer them a lot of additional things on top of that as well. And then on the right-hand side there, you've just got a breakdown of some of the roles that our graduates have progressed onto. So we actually have a really good record of retaining and keeping our graduates after the 2 years of the scheme, and they go on to provide, you know, some really good service to us in some of the roles that they undertake. And go on to the next one, please. So as part of the scheme, the graduates have 3 placements. They do 2 6-month placements, and then they do 1 12-month placement. The 12-month placement they arrange for themselves. So they kind of, as part of their scheme, they're encouraged to network and understand the council and its priorities. And then they think about where they would like to position themselves for their final 12 months on the scheme. But this is just an example of some of the work that they've been involved in while they've been on the scheme. So again, it is really good strategic alignment to what we're focused on as a council, what we're trying to deliver, and they really do benefit from having been involved in some of those jobs. So again, I mentioned the SIPFA scheme. So we have the finance and accounting SIPFA scheme, which is actually a graduate scheme and an apprenticeship combined. So when the apprenticeship levy came in and they introduced a level 7 apprenticeship standard that aligned to this one, we used that as the opportunity to use the funding to support people on this scheme. And we have a really good kind of track record of supporting our people to complete this. It's a hard qualification to actually achieve this, is not easy. And we work with SIPFA and we work with the teams to support people to get all the support that they need to complete their exams. And on the next slide, please, Janet, we have an example of this. So Sema is one of our finance graduates who's done the SIPFA scheme. She also was awarded a highly commended in our behind the scenes category at our own apprenticeship awards in 2022. And she talks as well in her example of the fact that actually she was able to pass all of her exams first time and successfully complete her qualification in 3 years, which is an amazing achievement. Great for Sema. She's a really good colleague, but also reflective, I think, of the support that's put around her in the team that she's in and from her colleagues. So really good example. And the next one. And then finally, our other graduate scheme is around our social work graduates, or our newly qualified social workers as we refer to them. So we offer all of our social work graduates who join us the opportunity to undertake the Assessed and Supported Year in Employment, which again is a national scheme governed by Skills for Care. And they get a lot of support through that scheme whilst they are with us. We also have coming up as part of linked to this is tomorrow. We are at the Social Work Awards and we have 3 finalists in the Social Work Awards. One of those categories is for being supported Social Work Employer of the Year. That's linked to some of the offer that we provide in terms of ASYE. And we've also got one of the colleagues in my team who is being recognised for Practice Educator of the Year, again in recognition of the support that's rolled out to newly qualified social workers. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and wishing those colleagues all the luck in the world for tomorrow. Move on, please, Janet. So this is just a little bit of an example about what we said in our nomination to be Social Work Employer of the Year. It really is about that wraparound support that we put in place to everybody. So not just for our newly qualified, this offer is for everybody, but it's particularly imperative, I think, when you're at that early stage of your career, that you know that that support will be there for you, not just when you're new, but as you're progressing through as well. So there's lots there that's been happening in that space. So the next part we focused on was this about actually, so when you finished a particular scheme, how does that move on? What other support is there for you? So if you want to move on, please, Janet. So we have career conversations. So this is separate to the kind of our conversations appraisal process. We actually have one-to-one careers conversations. So within the Learning and Development Service, I have a small group of colleagues who are qualified careers guidance professionals. And we offer these sessions for colleagues to book onto on a one-to-one basis to actually have a very specific personal conversation about their career ambitions, what support they might need to do, what their pathway might look like in terms of progressing and moving forward. We're also now incorporating that as part of the wraparound support for our Impact NGTP graduates to make sure that they're being well supported to think about their longer term career. And they're not run by my team, but we do support this, is we have the Cambridgeshire Careers Network, which is actually run by peers. So it's an opportunity for people who are interested in progressing their career to come together. They arrange sessions, they've done some visits and tours of things, they've had different guest speakers, and it really does give them an opportunity to hear some career stories. I've presented as that group, telling my own career story. Felt a bit old, but I have been and presented my own career story to them, and it was really interesting for them and to sort of ask me sort of questions about that. So that's another good thing that we've got in our offer. You can move on, please, Janet. We then just shared with the judges just some examples of thriving careers. So when we presented this to the judges, I was joined by one of our colleagues, Cambria. Cambria came with me to present to the judges, and we selected Cambria to help do the presentation because she ticked so many boxes. So Cambria herself is a Cambridgeshire success story. She has been here for 8 years. She's been promoted 5 times in that time. She's moved into lots of different roles and has really built her career up. She's undertaken an apprenticeship herself. She did a management apprenticeship, which was really useful to her. And she was also involved in the management of Sarah, who we saw as Apprentice of the Year at the LJ Awards. So Cambria's lens on this was a really good one to have her explain her story to the judges. So she gave us lots of examples, but I love the quote that she gave us, you know, Cambridgeshire County Council is a place to grow and develop. I've been encouraged by several managers over the year who've supported me to seek new opportunities, and this has made me feel invested in. And I think what's really nice about Cambria's quote there is, you know, from a corporate perspective, we can make sure there's a really robust offer, but actually it's about the managers and the colleagues that are working alongside as well to make sure that that's supported and embedded and encouragement is there for people. Next one, please, Janet. We also told Ed's story. A few of you might be familiar with Ed. So Ed was one of our colleagues who joined via the National Graduate Development Programme, now Impact as it was. And Ed was really happy to sort of share his career story and all the sort of opportunities as well that he's been involved in. You know, he's quoting him, felt really supported and nurtured within CC, and he's looking forward to see where his career goes. I think he's got aspirations to stay for a while and really progress through the leadership of the organisation, which is wonderful. He's currently working for us at Grafton Water as a business development manager, but it was really nice to be able to showcase Ed as well. And then just finally, so we are also really proud to be members of the 5% Club. If you're not familiar with 5% Club, we became a member last year. The 5% Club is a national organisation, and it is really about supporting employers to think about how you can have more of your organisation involved in earn and learn schemes. And so that could be apprentices, graduates, sponsored students, etc. Last year, when we were awarded the silver membership, which meant we were on our way to being 5% of our workforce in earn and learn schemes, we were the first county council to ever be awarded a silver membership in the 5% Club. It's not just about the accolade of having the badge, etc., though, because what we get from being members of this is the insight. So they produce a big benchmarking report that tells us exactly where we sit with all the other members. It provides some really useful opportunities to think about who we might want to talk to learn and to progress and to understand how they have progressed things. And then if we have the next one, please, Janet. So we don't yet have the results for the next one. They are embargoed until another couple of weeks' time, when it will be announced how we have done in the current audit for 2024. However, the data that we have submitted as an organisation leaves us feeling relatively confident that we have done enough to reach the gold status for 5% Club, but we're unable to confirm that position yet. That will follow very soon, hopefully. And I think that's me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that. It's a really rich report and in such an important area. Thank you so much for that. And obviously we're very, await keenly the result. So do we have any questions or comments? Henry and then Lucy.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I mean, again, a lot to digest there, but you giving an overview is very helpful, because that does answer a lot of the questions that I might have asked about the report itself. But one question I had that's just more for personal interest more than anything else is around hybrid working and sort of our offering to graduates. So I know certainly post-COVID, and certainly in the industry I work in, it is sort of now an expectation that hybrid working will be an element of full-time employment. So I just wanted to know from your personal experience of being involved in these schemes, how much that is essentially a request or, even an expectation of people coming out of full-time education or even the younger workforce. And if, dependent on the role being applied for, obviously some are very hands-on, so it's difficult to do that, but about, how much we can actually accommodate that, even if they are within an apprenticeship or a graduate scheme.
Thank you for the question. I'm sure you can probably appreciate that the organisation we are and the breadth of roles that we have, there's not a single answer to that question. It very much depends on the person and which team they're working in and the requirements of the role. So we would support managers always to explore how hybrid can be incorporated as part of it. But for some roles, so if you are coming onto the ASYE programme as a newly qualified social worker, there is a real richness in being able to be alongside your colleagues. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're in an office all the time. It might be that you're shadowing somebody else on a visit to a family, but those opportunities are really precious. And interestingly, we're coming to the stage now, we're nearly at the end of it, where we had a lot of people who came to us as graduates who'd done their university through COVID, had done an awful lot of remote learning. And one of the things we've had to look at is what did they miss from those opportunities? And some of it was the opportunity to just learn by sitting next to somebody experienced. So for a lot of them, they'd missed the opportunities in placements, etc., to just hear, how does a colleague handle a conversation on the telephone? So having to recreate some of those opportunities for people to help them kind of catch up and fill the gaps. So we're very fluid in that way. Some of them can be very hybrid.
Thank you very much. Lucy.
Thank you. We've had lots of really good reports, but I'm afraid this is my favourite one of the day. I am really, really thrilled to have this here today, and partly because I vividly remember having a conversation with Janet, I think it's probably 2 years ago, although it might be 3, about how it would be wonderful to see this organisation having more apprentices involved and more people coming in and kind of moving through the organisation and being supported in their careers. And so it's completely wonderful to see how much of that is happening. And it's a huge benefit to the whole organisation as well as to those individuals. I'm going to make a small request for the next steps now, which is that it's kind of fantastic to see all of this work that's being done. And I sort of know that this is happening anyway from other places where I've been involved in this work, but almost all your examples are young people. And actually, it's just as important that we develop and support people to come in to do progression into graduate roles who wouldn't have ever thought of being graduates when they left school, people in their 40s and 50s who might be making a career change or might just never have thought of themselves as managers. And so when we have this report next year, and I'm looking forward just as much to seeing it next year, can we make sure that we're reflecting that actually this work is not just about young people, it's about supporting all kinds of people in our organisation to make the next steps in their careers, whatever they might be. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment and that very keen observation. So the presentation that I've just shared with you was about that criteria of it being for people under 30. We do have lots of examples of older people who are progressing their careers via apprenticeships. Our actual apprenticeship data does sort of follow the organisational demographic. So when you look at actually the spread of our workforce, our apprenticeship one is pretty much the same. Interestingly, a lot of our existing social work apprentices, I would say, are probably people who are now embarking on maybe their second or third career. So we have lots of people doing the social work apprenticeships who are kind of my age, in their 50s. So we have got lots of examples, very happy to share them with you. It's just the lens on this one was under 30s.
Brilliant. That's a really, really obvious explanation to why it looks like that. And I had a feeling, partly because I've been to some of our early year social workers events where I know that the profile of those people is a whole range. Actually, it's very female dominated. so it would be really nice to see some more men coming into doing that. But that's really reassuring and a really helpful bit of conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Neil.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just have to give a quick shout out for our apprentices in highways. They are absolutely wonderful. The input that they are bringing is incredible. New designs, better value for money, all kinds of stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And on that really positive note, thank you very much indeed for the report and all the work, which is extremely appreciated. Thank you very much indeed. We've been asked to note the progress made to date, and I think we can safely say we note that. Thank you very much indeed. The next item is the agenda plan. Can I ask Michelle, would you like to introduce this report?
This is the first time we've had an agenda plan actually to this committee, because we do now have some set dates planned. As Councillor Black alluded to earlier, this committee was quite reactive to events. So you can see that the dates from June, they will be filled in because group leaders have kindly agreed the meetings card for 2025-26. Other than that, I've nothing to add.
Thank you. Are there any comments about the agenda plan? Mike?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, and I'm really pleased that we've got an agenda plan and that we're going forward. I'd like to propose that for our February meeting that we should have an agenda item that how we're going to react to the changes that are coming in the sort of staffing employment thing, and in particular things like the Employment Rights Bill. Now, I know quite a lot of these things will be outside of this committee's purview, and we're going to be bringing them up something else. I mean, like, for instance, we're looking at a fair pay agreement for adult social care, and I'd imagine that's definitely going to go to the Adults and Health Committee, and things like the school support staff negotiating body are going to go elsewhere. And also, I think there's quite a lot of things that we will be doing already. So things like day one employment rights, I'd hope that quite a few of those that we are granting anyway through our agreements, and that we are not, for instance, dismissing people because we can in a certain timescale without any reason, but that, yeah, we would only be dismissing people in such ways that we would have a defendable reasons if everybody had day one employment rights. So I realise there's quite a lot of things. We will look at this and we'll say, well, okay, we're already doing that, and so on. But there are things that will be useful. I mean, I think, yeah, I would also like to see us be early adopters and enthusiastically pushing forward as the public sector, as a place where improving conditions for workers is being pioneered and is rolling out to other places. I think we may want to see whether there's any bits of our organisation where trials of the 4-day week will be appropriate. I'd also like to draw attention to the bit in the Employment Rights Bill about trade unions, where it says that all employees will have a right to a statement of their right to join trade unions, and that this will not only be on day one, but there are going to be regulations saying that this will be done regularly. It's something I've been pushing to say that we should be doing anyway. And actually, I'd like us to almost make an objective that we should have a higher density of trade union membership and much more involvement of our people within the democracy at work that trade unions represent. But certainly that part of the Employment Rights Bill, I'd have thought we should be an early adopter. Hopefully we haven't got things like 0 hours contracts, or that if we are, we will find it no difficulty in complying with the sort of laws that are going forward. But these are exciting times. I mean, after a grim 15 years, hopefully we're looking forward to moving forward and having achievements and a turnaround. So yeah, I'd like to propose that to for the agenda plan.
So can I just be clear that what's being proposed is a legislative update? Because I think that would incorporate a bit, that would be a sort of broad item, which could be an ongoing item. And discussions can ensue from that. I know Janet and Stephen want to come in.
Yes, I mean, there was a lot in, obviously, in what Councillor Black's just said, but I think to summarise that, we can bring a report in February, providing a summary of the Employment Rights Bill and where any gaps might be or anything that we need to do. Of course, there's aspects of that if they are brought into and then enacted, it will be a long way off. But some of those we're probably already doing or part doing, so we'll bring a summary of that. That's absolutely fine. But I do feel I just do need to make the point we absolutely don't dismiss anyone without a fair process. We're very clear on that. We've got some very clear and stringent processes around our around employment, so we would never do that. I think as far as union membership is concerned, obviously that's entirely voluntary. We make sure people are aware of the trade unions that we recognise within the organisation, but we can't push people to membership of them. And of course, we can't report on it either, because we can only report on the number of people who who pay through deductions paid through the old check-off system, as they call it. And that's a dwindling number of people. Most people pay directly through online membership. So we wouldn't be able to ever at one point say, you know, what the membership of trade unions is anymore. That's been the case for a very long time. And the only other thing on the 0 hours contracts, we don't have any enforced 0 hours, I can assure you. We do have relief contracts that people are able to take up if it works for them as well as for the organisation. But having said all of that, we will encapsulate a summary, of, as I've said, around the Employment Rights Bill, but I will think Stephen wants to perhaps come on as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So 2 observations from me. I'm very conscious that we are talking about a bill, not an act, so it will likely be amended. It's currently only at committee stage in the House of Commons. So I would anticipate that the final version of the bill before royal assent is given will still be subject to some amendments either through the House of Commons or the House of Lords. We can obviously talk about the implications of what is proposed in the bill, but recognise that the final act and what comes into legislation will be the bit that we have to respond to as an employer. And then the second observation from me, just for clarity, is where we reference the 4-day week in respect of the Employment Rights Bill that government have proposed, that's about flexible working rather than other councils taking steps forward to do effectively the equivalent of 100% of working time in 80% of working time. So it's slightly different. We already offer all of those flexible working provisions as an employer, and Cambridgeshire County Council is what's known as a flex first employer. So from day one, all of our employees can request to be considered for any flexible working arrangements that are relevant to them. I think it's just important that we recognise that that's what the Employment Rights Bill is about, not what some other councils may be piloting at present. And Chair, I think the final observation from me would be, I think recognising that there are significant contributions from a whole range of bodies, including the trade unions at a national level, employers at a national level, and many other professional bodies, I would anticipate that the government's consultations will result in quite substantial amendments to the final act when it's given royal assent. So very happy to bring a report forward, but just want to caveat that on the basis that we are already doing the vast majority of what's contained in the bill. And I'm sure we will be in a very well-placed position to respond to anything else that comes into force. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is indeed why I suggested having an update being a sort of legislative update, being, you know, a situation report really of where we are, because the legislation won't be finalised. And my only other observation would be to recognise that we actually do an awful lot for, we've just heard a great deal today about people strategy, about equality, diversity and inclusion, how we're going above and beyond the statutory requirements. So there is more to it than is in the legislation, but obviously having a forward look on legislation would be helpful. Mike, do you want to add something?
Oh, thanks very much, Chair. I mean, I'd like to say thank you for those contributions, because as I did say, I thought that we would be already implementing a lot of the things that are going to be in the Act. And as a reputable employer, I'm pleased that's the case, that where we can do it, we can. And I mean, thanks for the reassurances, but I'm glad it's what I'm expecting and not so, well, there are these exceptions. That's good. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. And yeah. You know, and I think it is on our radar as something that we can look at and, you know, worthwhile doing. But thanks, yeah, and yes, Chair, legislative changes are coming up. That sounds like what I'm asking. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm sensing support for a legislative update. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, that the agenda plan is noted. Thank you very much. The next item is I'm proposing to exclude press and public. So I'll read out the recommendation that we resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it contains exempt information. And it would be not in the public interest for this information to be disclosed as information relates to any individual. Do I have a seconder for that? Lucy, thank you very much. Can I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal to make their views known? Nope, thank you very much. I see no objections. So we'll take that as carried, and please go into confidential session. So we'll take a moment to, thank you. We'll just take a few moments while the link is disconnected.